So I have here 8 cards, and you can take a look at those, and I don't believe anyone on planet Earth could look at these cards and see any structure to them that will relate to the ending of our routine. No one will be able to anticipate where we're headed with this. I guarantee you. So here they are. So here are 8 cards of various values and colors and suits. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and perform these shuffles that we've just introduced, and we technically can perform any of them in any order and in any quantity. We truly can. So you could do 2 50% coatings, followed by 3 Bessey 2-2s, followed by 1 50% cut, followed by 12 Bessey 1-1s if you wanted. And you will still finish with the ending that we will finish with. Okay, so that's important to know. Okay, so let's go ahead and have you, if you were here, I would just have you randomly choose the order in which we'll do these. But since you're not here, I'll just have to choose. So maybe you'll ask for the Bessey 1-1 first. So let's go ahead and do that. So this is where you take the top, and then the bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom, top, and then the bottom goes on top. So that's the Bessey 1-1. Which one would you like next? Maybe you'll say the 50% cut. So this is where you just push over the top 4 cards and move them to the bottom. That's a 50% cut. Maybe you'll say the Bessey 2-2 next. That's just fine. So we'll go 1, 2 from the top, 1, 2 from the bottom, 1, 2 from the top, 1, 2 from the bottom. And finally, if we're going to do each of these just once, which we don't have to do that, but to keep the video from being too long, so let's do a 50% coating. So 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 50% of the cards, and then you just drop the rest on top. Okay. Now I really want to emphasize that we could continue. We could not do some of these. We could do more of one than the other, and we can do them in any order. That really, really is true. And try it out for yourself. And maybe as a added bonus, let me just point out something that is very, very powerful regarding a 50% cut. Now, a 50% cut, once again, is where you just push over the top 4 and then move them to the bottom. Well, that's just perhaps a little too simplistic looking, you know, that you're breaking off exactly half and then moving them to the bottom. It just seems like you're being very careful, because otherwise the whole thing's going to fall apart. Well, a better way actually to perform a 50% cut, which I've talked about extensively on the Hidden Structures channel, is something called a Charlier 1. A Charlier 1 shuffle. So let me go ahead and just demonstrate that for you, because if you haven't used it before and would like to use that instead of this kind of obvious pushing over 4 and then moving them to the bottom, this is a much more convincing way to go. So Charlier 1, how does that work? Well, what you do is you push over the top card, and now from the bottom you push over the bottom, just one card, and you put it on top. The top card here on the right goes on the bottom card here on the right goes on top, top to bottom, bottom to top, top to bottom, bottom to top. So that is actually equivalent to just pushing over half the cards and then changing the order of those 2 packets of 4 cards. It really is. It's a 50% cutting of the cards. Okay, well anyway, the point is, despite all of the mixing that we have done and all of the mixing we could do, let's go ahead and just kind of finish this. And there's a number of ways of finishing. If you've watched any of the videos on the Bessey Sequence playlist, a fun way to finish would be to do this triangle deal. Okay, so you just deal out into a triangle clockwise like this, and then you just stack in the opposite order, so in a counterclockwise order. Okay, so that's one way to undo the structure of a Bessey sequence, so that we now have two blocks of related cards. Okay, so what this would mean then is if we just give the spectator the top four cards and we retain the bottom four for ourselves, or you can just actually just create two piles in that fashion. That would be fine too. Maybe that would be better so that you don't associate these cards with them. You're just breaking the cards in half. It will result in these two sets of cards. We get a 7, 10, 2, Jack. Let's see, what do we get down here? We get a 3, 2, 5, Ace. Oh, that's curious. Whoops, I guess I need to move that over a little bit. Well, I don't know if that means anything to anyone, but if you've made note of something that I've had in plain view for this entire video, I have a piece of paper over here that's kind of been almost in the way. I maybe shouldn't have left it there the whole time. So I think I've written some kind of a prediction about what would occur after all of the random choices that you've made that have determined the order of these cards in the end. So let's see, what was the prediction I wrote? The sum of one pile equals the product of the other. What does that mean? Is that actually true? The sum of one pile equals the product of the other. Well, let's see. If we were to multiply these values, what happens? See, 3 times 2 is 6, times 5 is 30. We normally associate ace with 1, so 30 times 1 is 30. What about the sum of these over here? So 7 plus 10, 17, plus 2 is 19, plus 11 is 30. We normally count the Jack as an 11. So those add up to 30. These, when multiplied, give you 30. And that's exactly what I predicted would occur despite the randomization that was performed according to free choices made by you, the spectator. How is that even possible? Okay, so let's take a look at how that's possible. And I might even give you a different way to finish. I'm not sure how happy I am with that particular finish, with dividing the cards in half and that kind of thing. Okay, so how does this work? This set of 4 cards will be important to keep together, and this set of 4 cards will be important to keep together. Okay? It's because the product of these is 30 and the sum of these is 30 as well, and so our prediction will be shown to be true. Okay, well, how did I begin it? Well, what I did was I built a Bessey sequence relative to these two categories. Now, you may want to, let me just kind of show this here because it really may help people to kind of wrap their minds around some of this. I'm just putting out one. So what I'm trying to show here is imagine the ones are being associated with these cards. Okay, so imagine like writing a 1 on them in addition to their current card values. And then the remaining cards over here would be, quote, zeros. These are zeros and these are 1s. Okay? So to build a Bessey sequence, what do I need to do? Well, if I begin with a leading 1, these are the 1s. I could just take any one of these, like this. So this is like a 1, and now I need a 0, and another 0. So just any two of those, and then a 1. So this is like having 1, 0, 0, 1, and now I need a 0, quote, 0, and then a couple of 1s. These are being associated with 1s, and then I need, quote, a 0, a card associated with a 0. So technically this is now a Bessey sequence relative to those two separate sets of cards. Okay, so that's how I began. I began that way. Now perhaps an easier way to begin that I'll go ahead and just show you right now is to go back in time. Let's go ahead and just separate these again. And it looks like we have a couple of choices here, don't we? Because we have two twos. Okay, so those when multiplied give you 30, which is what we need. These these when added give you 30 as well. Now I may have switched the black 2 for the red 2, but it doesn't actually matter. We're only focused on card values. Okay, so I think it may be easier for most people to go ahead and just create this little packet where the card values when multiplied give you 30. Create a second packet where the card values add up to 30. Okay, so I think that's probably a little easier to kind of start there. And then we're going to go ahead and just put either set of 4 on top of the other. Okay, it doesn't matter. Now what you can do is use Warner Miller's very clever triangle deal to convert this into a Bessey sequence. And it's kind of a classy way to do it. And you've seen it already in this series, in this current series. So this is where you deal into a triangle like this, clockwise, let's say. And then when all of the cards are dealt out, you pick up the first pile again, and then you just stack in opposite order, or in other words, counterclockwise. And as you can check, this will now be a, quote, Bessey sequence relative to those two sets of card values. Well, what it means then is this is now protected against any Bessey shuffle. Now, Bessey shuffles will either preserve this structure type or convert it to its inversion. And it won't matter if it does actually change it to its inversion. Okay, so whether it preserves it exactly as is in terms of its Bessey organization or Bessey structure, or inverts it, it won't undermine anything we will accomplish in just a moment. Okay, but this is now a Bessey sequence. So really what I'm suggesting is you begin with those two piles of cards, one whose values multiply to 30, one whose values add to 30, just stack those, and then just use this very clever triangle deal to do the work of putting it into a Bessey structure, a Bessey sequence. Okay, and then from this point, you can perform any, in fact, any of the shuffles that I've shown you, any of the 20 shuffles I have shown you in this series so far. So if you want to go back in time, you can perform any of those in any quantity, in any order. You can leave some off the list, you could do all of them, and you can do as many of each of them as you like in any order relative to the others. Okay, I mean, that's the amazing thing. This structure is virtually indestructible. In fact, in some ways, it is indestructible if you are applying a Bessey shuffle. And as you're discovering, many, many common systematic shuffles that are used today are indeed Bessey shuffles, which means they preserve or invert Bessey sequences. And this is now a Bessey sequence relative to the two sets of cards that are of interest to us here. So now you can go ahead and perform a 50% coating. 1, 2, 3, 4. Drop the rest on top. You can do another one of those if you like. You can do the Charlier 1, top to bottom, bottom to top. Now I do have a separate video on the Charlier shuffle that you may want to look at on YouTube on the Hidden Structures channel. So if I went through that too fast earlier, we can do a Bessey 2-2 next. See, this is where you go 1, 2 from the top, 1, 2 from the bottom without dropping them. Sorry. 1, 2 from the top, 1, 2 from the bottom. And then we can do a Bessey 1-1. So this is just 1 from the top, 1 from the bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom, top, and then bottom goes on top. And then you could even do, well, you just continue to do this until the spectator says, okay, I'm convinced that no human could know anything really about the ordering of these cards, which is a very reasonable conclusion to draw. Now, in some ways, we don't know everything about these cards, okay? Now, if I were to peek at the bottom, and I know that this is a member of one of those sets, I know which set it's a member of, then I can actually deduce the nature of the top card, the next two cards, and then the fourth card, and then the nature of the fifth, and then sixth and seventh card, and the bottom card I already spotted. Okay, so there's many things you can conclude from this by just knowing the identity of the bottom, but we don't even need to know anything about the exact ordering of these cards, because the Bessey sequence structure has been preserved or inverted. And in either case, we can accomplish what we're going to now accomplish. Okay? So the way that I did it, if you remember, how I finished it was, I actually did the triangle deal. Okay? And what that does is it undoes a Bessey sequence back to this two blocks of four cards, one on top, one on bottom, and those two sets of four cards are the ones of interest to us. Okay, that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to just have in your mind's eye, so let me just put these out, sorry, just have in your mind's eye this sequence, 1 0 0 1 0 1 1 0. Okay? And so we're associating the top card with a 1, the next two cards are zeros, the fourth card is a 1, and so forth. So we want to separate the zeros from the ones. Well, we have a 1 here, so you can go like 1 0 0 1 0 1 1 0. You've just now separated the zeros from the ones. We've regained the original two sets of cards that have the special property that we wanted, namely the sum of one set of card values will be equal to the product of the other card values. And that is indeed the case here. And then you can bring out your prediction and just absolutely blow away the spectators that somehow you saw that this would happen. And the fact that these card values do weird things like, let's see, the product of those just happens to come out to be 30, which equals the sum of these. How in the world could anyone see that that was going to happen? And really, in normal life, that is impossible. What I have shown you here is indeed impossible, unless you have some sense of the structure of this packet of 8 cards and the effect of these shuffles on that packet, what it does to it and what it doesn't do to it. These shuffles do not fundamentally destroy the organization of these cards that's of value or of importance to us. They truly don't. Okay? And that's true regardless of whether the shuffle preserves the Bessey structure exactly, the form of it, or inverts it. It won't matter. Okay? Because when we're separating the zeros from the ones, it doesn't matter if this whole pile happened to be down here and this one happened to be up there. This prediction would still be true. The sum of one of the piles, we didn't say which pile, equals the product of the other pile. We didn't say exactly what pile that is either. It's just the other one. Okay? So anyway, that is an application, once again, of Bessey sequences and Bessey shuffles that might be fun for you to share with family or friends. But I hope you're getting an idea that there are countless ways to leverage your knowledge of the behavior of Bessey sequences when performing a whole host of common and useful shuffles employed today. So I appreciate you watching, and take a look at the previous videos in this series if you haven't. And if you have, then I encourage you to watch the next video in this series, which will be the 6th video out of 12 dedicated to Bessey shuffle diagrams. So thank you again for watching.